Performance Max is one of my favorite Google ad campaign types. When used in the right way and at the right time, it can produce exceptional results. But I know there are a lot of Google advertisers that are not seeing amazing results with Performance Max right now. And in this video, I'm going to explain why that happens and what you can do about it to substantially improve your results. Now, like I said, I'm a big fan of Performance Max, even though it comes under a lot of criticism, a lot of which I think are complete nonsense, by the way. But one criticism of Performance Max that I think is fair is that it remarkets too heavily, as in too large a proportion of the ad spend goes on warm audiences and not enough is spent acquiring cold audiences, brand new customers, people that haven't interacted with your business before. And the reason why Performance Max does that is because it's trying to get you the best results as quickly as possible, which is what a lot of Google advertisers want, right? So it's thinking, right, there's some low-hanging fruit here, there's some warm audiences, people have visited the website or engaged in other ways, and we can put ads in front of those people that have already engaged, maybe bought previously, already warm, and we can get them over the line by putting ads in front of them and get those conversions. And what that leads to often is a Performance Max campaign will go live, results will look fantastic for a short time period, whilst that low-hanging fruit is taken advantage of, these easy leads, easy sales are hoovered up, and then they drop off once those people that were close to converting have been pushed over the edge or decided that they're not interested. And Performance Max from there can kind of get a little bit stuck, still trying to put ads in front of those warm audiences, but they've fatigued, they've burnt them out, and potentially not focusing enough on new customers, new audiences, people that haven't interacted with the business before. So a lot of Google advertisers have the experience where they get great results and then they drop off relatively quickly and they're thinking, why, what did I do wrong? It's kind of part of the way Performance Max is set up. That's not an uncommon thing. Now there are things that you can do to fix this. Now this is more of an issue if you're a small business with smaller warm audiences. Because if you're a really big business and you've got really large customer base already, this could maybe never come up as a problem because a good proportion of the ad budget can be spent on warm audiences, getting them to convert and remarketing them. And that's great because you're generating lots of conversions, you're reactivating existing customers, but you need large warm audiences to do this. And I think that's why some advertisers look at Performance Max as a campaign type that is more suited to the bigger companies, more establishment, larger customer bases, and less for smaller businesses. I don't think that's necessarily true. Smaller businesses, newer businesses can absolutely use Performance Max. Honestly, businesses that have larger customer bases, bigger brands, they see better results no matter what campaign type they use, whether it's Performance Max or search or whatever, because they're leveraging that. They're leveraging all those existing previous customers. They're leveraging their brand. They're more likely to get the click. They're more likely to get the conversion. There are all sorts of advantages that come with that. So anyway, that's a little aside. What we want to talk about here is what can you do if you're not seeing good results with Performance Max? Or let's say either you started a Performance Max campaign and it just didn't perform from day one, or you did run a Performance Max campaign and as is very common, it performed well for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a bit longer, but then results really dropped off. What you can do is you can actually set up your Performance Max campaigns to bid much more aggressively for new customers and basically say to Google, I know that the way you're currently set up is to get conversions wherever you find them, whether it's from warm audiences or cold audiences, but I actually value a conversion from cold audiences more because I can't just keep fishing in the same pond. I can't just keep putting ads in front of the same people. I need to go out and find new people to put ads in front of. So I'm going to show you how you go about doing that. So I'm in an example Google ad account. I'm in the new campaign creation process for a Performance Max campaign. And you can see here that one of the first things you decide is your bidding strategy. Now, a lot of bidding strategies is going to be focused on, do you go with conversions value? Do you set a target return on ad spend? I've got another video that covers that part of the bidding strategy in a lot of detail. So I'll include a link in the video description. You can check that out, find it on my channel. What I want to talk about here is this feature down below that a lot of Google advertisers miss. And that's this customer acquisition feature where you can adjust your bidding to help you gain new customers. This is really interesting. So if I go ahead and click on this, you can see we've got a number of different options here. So what we can do is we can bid higher for new customers. Instead of the two options, I'll get to the other option in a second. This is the recommended one. And Google explains your campaign will help you acquire new customers while driving overall purchases by reaching all customers. So with this setup, you still will have ads put in front of your warm audience, but what we're going to do is say to Google, new customers are worth more to my business. I want you to spend more for those people, okay? So let's go ahead and click setup on this, and you can see how this is set up. This little window comes out from the right-hand side. So we've got new customers, add an incremental conversion value for new customers. So this amount increases the conversion value for a new customer over an existing customer. So you can see, for example, that this is an example ad account, so these numbers aren't sort of real, but they're good for example purposes. Google is saying that an existing customer is worth £41.62, and they're recommending the suggested incremental conversion value for a new customer should be an extra £27.47. So let's go ahead and add that in. We'll just go with the Google recommendations. And what we're basically saying is, to Google, existing customers worth £41.62, new customers are worth £69.09 because you're adding those two together. And what that's going to do is then tell Google, oh, okay, because this type of customer is worth more, we can bid more for this person. We can spend more trying to acquire these than the other options. It doesn't eliminate any ad spend on warm audiences, but shifts the balance more towards cold audiences and shows that you're preferring new customer acquisition, all things being equal, than existing customers, which I think applies to a lot of businesses. At some point, you need to get new customers, unless, like I said, you've got these massive customer lists. Then we've got point 2, where it says add audience segments of current customers to help us identify new customers. It's going to help with targeting within the campaign, but also help with this feature so Google better understands your existing customers. So you want to add in existing customers and make sure you've got that set up in Audience Manager. I've got other videos that cover how you go about doing that. I won't cover that here, but something that you want to do as part of this. And then we've got this section down below, which is kind of a bit more advanced. I normally recommend that most Google advertisers that want to play around with this incremental conversion value on new customer feature do it just with the regular new customers. But there is a way to make this even more powerful, and this will apply more to some businesses than others, where you can select new customers high value, and it works in the very same way. But what you're saying to Google is, I want not only you to bid more for new customers, but I want you to bid even more for high value new customers. And this is going to matter more for businesses where your customer values are very varied. Some businesses, you have a big range, right? Some customers are worth not a lot. Some customers are worth a huge amount. So here we've got the suggested value of £54.94. Again, you're going to have to know your numbers and change these and really think about, actually, I'm willing to pay 5 times as much for a high value customer as opposed to a low value customer, because they're worth 10 times as much to my business, or whatever it happens to be. And then you're going to need to do the same thing, add in the audience segments of your current high value customers so that Google knows what a high value customer is. And you get to make that determination. So this could be a list that includes people that spend 3 times your average AOV, or that have a 5 times longer run rate on subscriptions than the average person. Maybe there's certain characteristics, age, location, things like that determine those people, okay? And you can go ahead and add these in. Again, there are some more complex settings even beyond that as part of this feature, where it gets into lapsed customers high value. Would you be willing to pay more to reactivate a previous customer? That's going to very much depend on your business. And I don't think that's going to apply to a huge amount of people watching this, so I'm going to skip this part for now. I'll probably do another video on it in a second. But that's how you go about the general principle. And you can see here, right, with like, this is what an existing customer is worth, this is what a regular new customer is worth, this is what a high value new customer is worth, and Google can factor that into where your budget gets spent in order to acquire those people. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that, because what I want to do is, and you can see we've got errors here, we've got to define the existing customer. That's because it's an example ad account. Like I said, I would normally do that, and you can check out another video on audience segment stuff, find that on my channel for more info. Now, there's another option that I want to go through here that's really interesting and potentially really powerful, might be really useful for your business. First, I want to quickly let you know about our done-for-you Google Ads services. So my agency can create, manage, and optimize your Google Ad campaigns for you. We can take all that workload off your hands, or take it off the hands of another agency if you're working with one that's not getting you great results. We spent more than $50 million on the Google Ads platform for thousands of clients. Very much know what we're doing, work in every niche you can think of all over the world. Very experienced, know our stuff. We'll almost certainly be able to help you get better results. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, there is a link in the video description. You can click on that, come through to a page on our website, book in a free, no obligation call to find out how we might be able to help. So if that sounds interesting, go ahead and do that, and hopefully we get a chance to work together. So as part of this customer acquisition section, we also have this option, which is the more extreme version, which is only bid for new customers. Okay, you can see your campaign will be limited to only new customers, regardless of your bid strategy. We're getting an error pop up here because, like I said, example ad account, we don't have all the audience segments set up, but you can do that. You can find resources on my channel for that. This is a brave option for businesses to go with. There are scenarios where we have used this. They are quite rare. It might be that a business is going into a completely new market and they really don't want to be advertising to their previous audiences at all, then you might go with something like this. Let's say, for example, the business was operating just at the economy end of the market, let's say, relatively inexpensive products, and now they want to sell ultra premium. You're like, right, this is just a complete, like, we have to keep these things completely separate. We need only new customers, but they are quite rare. My preference would typically be to go for this option, to bid higher for newer customers and set it. And you can always come in and adjust this depending on their value. You have to know your numbers, etc., etc. Only bidding for new customers can be tricky. But I know a lot of business owners are paranoid, is probably one way of saying it, about advertising only to people that are already aware of them and they feel like that's a waste of money. I push back on that quite hard and think that often that comes from a place where business owners are thinking about their own business all day, every day. So they sort of assume that their customers are as well. That's just not true. The customers are thinking about their own stuff, their own work, their family lives, all sorts of things. They're not thinking about your business. I think putting ads in front of people that already are aware of you to reactivate them, to remind them, has a lot of value. But a lot of business owners don't want to do that. They want to instead only focus on new customer acquisition, and that is an option if you want to go ahead and do that. Like I said, for me, a little bit too extreme most of the time. So a few things you need to know about using, well, either of these strategies, but I'm going to focus mainly on the bidding more for new customers as opposed to only going for new customers specifically. You are going to pay more, most likely, for a sale, for a conversion initially with this, because you are saying to Google, you know what? Don't prioritize that low-hanging fruit like you normally would. Actually, I want to put an extra weighting on these newer customers. I am willing to pay more to acquire new customers. That's the deal you're making here. You're saying, I am willing to pay more to acquire new customers, and therefore you are likely to pay more. Google's not going to take advantage of remarketing as much. This might be better in the long run for your business. I'm going to talk about whether to use this or not in a second. It's almost certainly going to give it more longevity. So even though you might see higher costs to acquire a customer initially, maybe you don't have that big drop off after a few weeks that you would otherwise. So you can run that campaign for longer and it can still be within KPIs, and you can have a much more balanced spread. Instead of it being really heavy remarketing at the beginning and then sort of running out those people and being only cold, you can keep those ratios more consistent over time, which clearly has a lot of value. So we don't do this by default. When we're running a Performance Max campaign, let's say we're working with a new client, they've got some campaign data, we feel like that the account has enough conversions in it to be able to run Performance Max, then we will run Performance Max campaigns. We will not normally bid more for new customers at that point. We will do that if we see issues with the Performance Max. So like I said, just not performing in comparison to other campaign types, or it did perform well, but then dropped off in terms of results after a relatively short time period. That's when we might go, we'll go ahead and look at increasing the bid for new customers, take advantage of the things I've already talked about, the benefits. We may also do that if that's something that the client really wants. And like I said, I've spoken to a lot of business owners where that is quite important to them. They're like, we really want incrementality. We want to know that our advertising efforts are getting us more than we would have got anyway. We sort of don't want to be advertising too much to warm audiences and existing customers. I think that's a fear that's overblown, like I've already said, but that is a thing that we often hear, and therefore we'll accommodate that as well. So you need to think about, do I do this or not? Well, have you had issues? If not, I wouldn't do it by default. And then the other thing is, you've got to understand your business, understand the logic of the feature. You go, is it actually more valuable for me to acquire new customers? Maybe you're in a market where people use your products or services for a relatively limited time in their lives. So let's say you sell baby-related products, right? Well, most people are only going to buy baby-related products for a relatively short period of time, depending on how many kids they have, right? They're only a baby for a year or so, and then you're done buying some stuff that parents who have kids that age would look to buy. So maybe in a business like that, you're like, no, we need new customers, because if we just keep putting ads in front of existing people, they're going to at some point not be interested in our products because they're just not in that phase of life. So we really aggressively do need to get new customers. We want to get them as and when they're becoming parents for the first time or again. That's when we want to acquire those. So in that sort of scenario, that's where you need to understand your business and understand your customers and why they buy, when they buy, and whether or not you would look to use a feature like this. And no matter which campaign type you use, it is absolutely essential that you can accurately track your Google Ads data so that you can optimize properly. And the best way to do that is with Hyros. Hyros is fantastic tracking and attribution software and can really help you improve your Google Ad results. It's a software that all the big players in the industry use, including myself. I use it to track results for my own ads across multiple platforms, including Google Ads, and all my organic results as well, which is super helpful. So if someone, for example, comes through and books a call for our done for you services, I can see exactly where that person came from. This is particularly important if you're running ads across multiple channels or generating customers organically as well. Without accurate data, you are flying blind, and knowledge is power. So let me show you how important this is. So I'm here in my Hyros dashboard. I'm going to take a look at the data and the results that Hyros has been able to track and compare those to what I'm seeing within my Google Ad account for the same campaign. So this is a Google Ad campaign that we've been running. We're only looking at data for a few days here, but it really demonstrates what's going on. So you can see Hyros has registered 6 leads generated, a cost per lead of just over £15, 75 clicks. It's just a branded search campaign, hence why the CTR is 30%. So not a huge amount going on, but representative, right? So that's the data we can see within Hyros. If I jump over to my Google Ad account, we look at the exact same campaign, same time frame. We've got May 21st to 27th. You can see a lot of the data matches up, right? We've got 75 clicks, 30% CTR just like before. But if we scroll over, you can see that Google has only registered 3 conversions as opposed to the 6. So it's registered half the number of conversions. And I can tell you, looking at the back-end data, that the 6 from Hyros is the accurate number. And that's why this is so important, because we might look at the Google Ads data and come to the wrong conclusion, think this isn't profitable, turn stuff off when we shouldn't, but we can verify it with the Hyros data and make much better, more informed decisions and end up with better overall ad results because of it. So if you want to improve the performance of your Google Ad campaigns and be able to see exactly where your leads and sales are coming from, go ahead and sign up to Hyros. There is a link in the video description. So automated campaign types like Performance Max, there are other examples within Google Ads, Demand Gen. They raise this interesting question around balance. And the balance is between how do we prioritize, what do we split the budget between new people, reaching new people, and converting engaged audiences? Now, nearly all businesses need both. And the interesting thing about this question is there's no right answer. I get a lot of questions from people along the lines of how much should I spend on remarketing versus cold audience acquisition? And there's no blanket answer I can give across the board because it's going to depend on your industry. And it's also going to depend on how mature your business is, how established it is in the marketplace. So it's something that's different for different businesses and also changes over time. I'll give you some examples to sort of help understand this. How much reaching new people do you think McDonald's need to do or Coca-Cola need to do? There's hardly anyone, I mean, sure there will be some people, but there'll be hardly anyone within their target markets that haven't been to a McDonald's, haven't drunk Coca-Cola products. It'd be a tiny, tiny percentage. So almost none of their ad spend will be going on reaching new people. They kind of don't exist. New cold audiences kind of don't exist for those businesses. They're just looking to convert engaged audiences, reactivate existing customers. Now, they still do a lot of advertising, and that should tell you something for those people who are afraid of remarketing and think it's a waste of money. These are some of the biggest, most recognizable brands in the world, and they still spend a lot to reactivate customers. Whereas a new business that no one's ever heard of, it might basically be all on reaching new people because they don't have any engaged audiences. So there's absolutely, you could be 100% one end, 100% the other end, and there's lots of places in between. If I look at my own business as an example, when I first started running ads to get clients, which I did, that was my main form of customer acquisition for many, many years. It's still a huge part of our customer acquisition. But when I first started doing it, it was all cold audiences. No one knew who I was. I started my business when I was 23. I was running ads, offering free calls to hopefully then try and provide some value and convert people. And it was very time consuming and difficult, but that's how I went about doing it. It was all to reach new audiences. And then over time, more and more of my advertising was spent on remarketing. And now I'm at the point where we barely spend anything ad spend wise, advertising our own services that's not remarketing. We know that people who have already, for example, consumed some of my content or seen many of my ads over years because they've been doing it so long, they are far more likely to convert, they're far more likely to stick around. So those are the leads that we want. And also, because of my business dynamics, we can only work with so many customers. So if we had 100 new clients that wanted to come on next month, no way. We couldn't serve 100 new clients all in one go. That would take a while to put through the system. And I have over 1 million followers, subscribers across social channels, including both of my YouTube channels. So we have plenty of leads within that audience to be able to fill out our capacity. And we're always trying to add capacity. We're trying to grow as a business. We're ambitious. We want to do great work for clients, etc., etc. But because of my business dynamics, we're basically at 100% remarketing, even though obviously my brand is not McDonald's or a Coca-Cola or anything, just because of We work with a relatively small number of customers in comparison to the engaged audience size that we have. And that's something that needs to be factored in. If we were the same size business, but we sold e-commerce products and I had the same size audience, we would then be spending a lot more on cold audience. Because if you're an e-commerce business, instead of working with, a few hundred clients at any one time, you want to be selling to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, because the average order value is that much less. And you'll see on my content, I've talked quite a lot about really knowing your business and knowing your numbers and knowing your customers. And that's to help you with decisions like this, because so many advertisers just want the easy answer. They want someone like me to say, it's this, just do this option all the time. And there are lots of people that create content like that. And they create content like that because there's a market for it. And it'd be a lot easier for me to do that as well. I wouldn't have to have all the caveats and explain the nuances, and I could say some more direct stuff and it'd probably get more views, but it's just not what people need to hear. And we know that because as a Google Ads agency, we work with all different types of businesses across different niches, across different countries. And we've learned over time that you have to tailor the strategy and the setup to each individual business. To do that, you need to understand the business and understand the customers to be able to work out, should we be bidding more aggressively for new customers or not? Are we actually happy for all the performance max budget to go on remarketing? Or do we need to more aggressively go for cold audiences? Do we need to exclusively go for cold audiences? How much extra can we afford to spend to acquire a new customer versus an existing customer? Can we take a look at the different, or a high value even, we can make it more complex. So you need to know this stuff. Now, one thing that we scooted past when we went through this video was the bidding strategy stuff, the conversions value, CPAs and target ROAS and things like that. If you want to know more information about that, I strongly recommend you check out this video because I break it all down, make recommendations for what you should and shouldn't use. Bidding strategy, whether it's this customer acquisition feature or the main sort of bidding strategy options, one of the most important parts of a Google Ad campaign. You have to get it right. So if you haven't already, go and give this a watch.